Hi, everyone. I'm Weslee Hill, and I am one of the ministers of congregational care at Brentwood United Methodist Church. And we are really glad that you all have joined us for our latest edition of Resiliency and Hope. We have kind of set aside this time for, I guess, the last 6 months to just have conversations that are surrounding mental wellness. In this time where we are and coming out of, and just with a lot of other things going on, we want to make sure that we address the mental aspect of things as well as spiritual things here at the church and that kind of stuff. So we're really glad that you're here and that you've joined us for these conversations. Over the last 6 months, we have talked about, oh gracious, we've talked about anger, we've talked about anxiety, we've talked about depression, isolation, grief, lots of different topics. And as we have kind of looked through this and talked through this, last time when we had our conversation, I brought up this little picture that basically reminds us that grief and our process is kind of messy. It's not a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's kind of messy. And if you happen to be in one of those places where we've discussed before with anger or anxiety, I really hope that you will go back to those and listen to them again, kind of give refreshers. So tonight, what we are going to do is we are going to be discussing some coping mechanisms, some tools, giving you some tools as you are facing some of these challenges or struggles or excitements or anything that might be going on for you. For those, some of you joining us may or may not be aware that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And at the church, we believe that it is important to address the mental health as well as the spiritual health. We happen to have a community around us that often seems very put together on the outside, but that isn't always the case on the inside. And when everybody around you looks like they're put together, sometimes it's hard to raise your hand and go, I'm struggling. So hopefully what we are doing here is we are allowing those conversations to start and giving you a place and some language to go and have these kinds of conversations about what's going on internally with you. Another reason is we were created in community. We want you to know that you are not alone. So we want to give you those resources where you know where you can reach out and you have help if you need it. So I'm going to introduce you to our private practice therapists who are with our church counseling center and our mental health experts. We have Dr. John Fite, we have Dr. Jim Wellborn, and we have Stacy Jagger. Their credentials here: Dr. Fite is a counseling psychologist who specializes in individual and couples therapy for adults, adolescent individual therapy, as well as both executive and life coaching. And we have Dr. Jim Wellborn, and he is a clinical psychologist who specializes in individual, family, and group psychotherapy with children and adolescents. And Stacy Jagger is a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in restoring connection between children and their parents. So thank y'all for being here. We're always glad that you're here because then everybody doesn't have to listen to me the whole time. And I also want to remind everybody who's listening that we're on there should be a box where it is that you have joined us, and there's an Ask a Counselor. So if you have any questions while we are talking, if you want to submit those, then we'll be able to answer them live here. So John, you're muted. I don't know if you know that.
I am muted. What do you want me to speak to first?
I just wanted to say hello.
Hello. It's good to see you.
Welcome to May. I always like it when y'all are here. We have fun conversations. Okay. So as we are talking about tools that we have. My dad's a tool, he has a shop in the house. And
wait a minute, did you say your dad is a tool?
no, I said my dad has a shop. I was gonna say
okay, I'm sorry, I got distracted there for a moment.
Hey, now he might be listening.
He's
gonna go back and listen to this.
I'm sure he's a fine person.
He is. He is. So anyway, yes, welcome to our sessions.
To the madhouse.
Yes, it is. There's a method to our method. So my dad has a workshop. There we go. He has a workshop, and he is often telling my kids, hey, here's the flathead screwdriver, or here's the Phillips head screwdriver, and you have different tools for different things. You don't want to be using a hammer if you need to be knitting something, and a screwdriver is not going to help you to cut down a tree. So what I would like for us to do here tonight is to kind of talk about some of the tools that you all use when you're with your clients. It's kind of a broad topic there, so we can kind of narrow it down if we want to. But just, I know there are lots of different things that we face. We've spent the last several months talking about anxiety, isolation, those kinds of things. But are there some go-to resources that you all use with your clients in general or specifically? Ready, set, go.
Yes.
Yes.
There are. And
what would those be?
Well, one of the things is that there are some non-specific tools in therapy that, I guess you might call them like the equivalent of the Swiss Army knife or something, where you can use them a lot of different ways. And one of the really basic tools in therapy is the relationship itself, because it's very healing to have a relationship with someone. One of the questions I ask people on intake is about the people that they're close to. And it's almost always true that many of the people that I see are quite isolated. And it's possible to be isolated or feel lonely, even in the context of a relationship. So one of the tools that therapy provides at the very basic level is feeling known. That's kind of a remedy for loneliness for most of us across the board. And it is unfortunately like a bucket with a hole in it. We keep having to replace that. So relationships themselves, and that could be anything for someone who's in a spot, from therapy to support groups to pursuing hobbies or volunteer activities of like-minded people in connection with a church. It could be with a Stevens minister or a Sunday school class, but relationships themselves, especially with healthy people, are healing.
Well, I would dovetail on that, John, and that there are some core elements of experiences or aspects of both our psychology and our social relationships that kind of weave themselves through any of the particular things that are going on with somebody who comes into the office. And so I was thinking in the answer to that question is, one answer is, some of it depends on what someone is coming in that they're struggling with, or that they're having difficulty with, or that they want to have be different. And so that there's some specific things that look different for one kind of issue or focus of what you're meeting with somebody about versus another. But there are some that go across that and then get kind of overlaid into whatever's happening. And one of those is that the kind of expectations or beliefs that you have play a critical role in how you approach dealing with difficult situations, how you resolve problems, what you anticipate and what you think is possible in the world. And so one element is paying attention to what your underlying kind of expectations or belief sets are. Because if, for example, you think, just as a way to be overly simplistic, if you think everything is going to turn out badly and terrible things are going to happen, it turns out that, first of all, that has a serious impact on your ongoing emotional state, but it also interferes with you recognizing the things that indicate they're not going badly, because you're focused on attending to your expectations or belief, what is proof or validation or confirmation that it's going badly. So expectations and beliefs and paying attention to those is important for almost anything that you're going to be coming into therapy about. And there's lots of different ways to address that and get to that. But that's one set of things. Another set of things, that kind of category of things, is specifically related to me, what John is talking about. And so he was mentioning the importance of the relationship, of a relationship, and within that relationship being and feeling known. And in the psychology, the research side of psychology, a significant kind of representation of that is what's known as social support. And so what the research shows is that social support is a critical factor in how well people function. Do you have social support? Is it available to you? Now, there's some interesting things about that. And that is that it turns out you don't have to have a huge social support system for you to get benefits from it. It can be one person. But the qualification of that is that if you only have one person who's you're getting social support from, if something happens to that person, you're vulnerable. So all you need is one person, but it helps to have a couple in case, from a practical standpoint, in case something happens to one of them, and you still need to be able to benefit from the support that you get from other people. The reverse of that is also you providing that. There's another element of the relationship aspect that I think is implicit in what John was talking about, which is it's not just being known and having someone know you, it's you providing that in a relationship to somebody else, you communicating that you know and see and appreciate those other people. So you being a source of support for other people. Those are a couple that come to my mind.
So encouraging those connections.
Most definitely, and making sure that you have them. And that, of course, obviously, is part of what was so profoundly disruptive about the pandemic and the isolation that we had, is that it significantly interfered with the ease and the familiar and pre-existing ways that we both got support and provided support. And so that isolation was not just that you're staring at a wall, but you're also not getting that kind of confirmation and validation and a sense of another person knowing you as a human being and you being in a relationship where you know them too.
I can piggyback on that. So the great majority of my clients are children and families, and in working with the whole family system, I really needed a way to help parents in an efficient way to help them have sort of a redo in their own parenting. Many parents that come to me with their children, young children, will come to me and say, I was raised in an alcoholic home, or I was raised in a highly dysfunctional home. And how do I raise a young child when I don't have any positive memories of my own childhood, or I don't really know how to be a parent? And one of the ways that I help them to sort of have a redo experience is with the yellow book of ACA. This workbook is absolutely phenomenal. And I will take the parent or parents through this yellow book and guide them through at least the first 5 steps of the of the Yellow Book of ACA while I'm simultaneously working with their young child. So there's
Stacy,
sort of
that's adult children of alcoholics. The
it
AIDS,
is.
yeah.
You can get this book from, if you go to adultchildren.org, you can get the book, or you can also get it on Amazon. But it really gives parents, when you have a young child, you have your time is very limited, and your time to be in therapy is very limited. And so I was really looking for a way for parents to have a resource that could guide them through a reparenting experience. And I personally haven't found a better, more efficient, and even it's free. I mean, it's a free support group to help parents who really have found themselves parents of young children, but really didn't get that good parenting themselves and have an opportunity to kind of have a redo. So I highly recommend the Yellow Book of ACA as a resource to a lot of parents. That's something that you can jot down.
We'll put that on our resources page too.
Yeah.
So there'll be a link for that.
Yeah.
Was there something else you wanted to add to that?
No, that was all that's in my head. You were talking about social support, and that was the first thing that popped in my mind.
Yeah. It sounds like one of the, like for all three of y'all, one of the biggest tools we have are the people who are around us. They're our relationships. They're our friends. They're what we're involved in. It's making sure that we're still involved in those things.
And your church community and your pastors or faith leaders that you have, those are the roles that they play, and therapists. There's just a whole range of ways that you can have and experience and get the kind of support that you need, natural ways and then more structured ways. So for sure.
Well, you got to my page 4, and I'm only on page 2.
Okay,
so
well,
page
back
4
up.
is the one that has all those resources.
I'll also throw out that the Refuge Center in Franklin, is underwritten by the Williamson County community. Amy Alexander, the executive director, is my neighbor, and she's fantastic. And what I like about it is when I get a call from a family that they are completely unable to financially afford counseling, that is where I typically will send them. And the master's level interns that they bring on there get excellent training at the Refuge Center. And so it's really not subpar therapy there. It's really quality work that they're doing. So that's a good resource to maybe add to the whatever you're doing here underneath it. Yeah.
Well, and as a former one of those master's level interns, those are great. We love those clients too.
Yeah.
So, John, were you about to say something there?
No, I wasn't.
Why not, Don? Don't you have more to share?
I want to give Weslee a chance to ask another question here first.
Well, actually, what I was going to do is, since we had talked about resources, I was going to pull up page 4 and just go ahead and talk about that.
Hey,
Our church. What's that?
if you want to jump ahead, I mean, what are we skipping?
Because we're all about doing things random. Some of the things that we actually have at the church, we do have these 3 counselors who are in private practice in a building right behind our church. And their information is on our website. It's also part of the Resiliency and Hope site there as well on our site. How many times can I say the word site? Anyway, but if you want to look for them, their information is at bumc.net/counselors. So that's where you'll find their contact information. You'll find
it'll take you to our websites, and so all the stuff that we have about ourselves and resources are in general are there. So that's
right. So that's where you can find. That's where everybody can find y'all's information.
right.
Something else that we have with the church, if you go onto bumc.net, at the very top there are 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 tabs at the top. It says connect, worship, serve, care, and give. So there are 5. If you look under the care tab, that's the place where you're going to find options for individual and group care, support groups, that kind of stuff. They have counselors under there too. But one of the ones that I really wanted to bring up for us, one of y'all, John, I think you mentioned it, is our Stephen Ministry group. And this is, here's our little pamphlet. This is what it looks like. It is a, let's see, they're not counselors, but they have received a whole lot of training on how to listen and how to care for people who are struggling with things. And what happens is we have a confidential hotline that you can call. That phone number is 615-577-4881. Or if you go to that Stephen Ministry tab, there's a way to submit a request and to get information as well, and an email. So basically what they do is let's see, the thing that was on the site that I wrote down so that I wouldn't get it all wrong. They're church members who have received extensive training on providing one-on-one Christian care to people who are dealing with health crisis and other difficulties. They're not, like I said, they are not counselors like Stacy, John, and Jim, but they can work with counselors if you have one. And they can do things like listen and care, encourage, pray with and for you.
And they also know a lot about resources. They're a kind of focal point for getting some support with people who know how to do that. It's one thing about doing therapy, but support when somebody's having particular kinds of difficulty or challenges or life stresses isn't always obvious. It's not always logically what you think would be helpful. And so that's where their training and their experience with folks who are struggling with stuff comes in. And so they are there as a supportive presence, and also as a way to help think through what are resources of all sorts to get to. And they're wonderful. They've been around for how long have the Methodists? I think the Methodists originated Stephen's Ministers, and it's been around for like long time.
Long time.
Yeah.
See if that's in here. But yeah, that's actually, it's kind of a different kind of relationship because they're not therapists.
Right.
So there can be a different relationship between a Stephen minister and a care receiver than there would be with a counselor and a client.
Right.
So, I mean, those two things can coincide at the same time. You can have a counselor and a Stephen minister, and that creates that support system as well.
Right.
I can't say enough good things about the Stevens ministers that I've worked with. And I would say one of the things that they can do is they really can kind of amplify the effects of therapy by kind of extending that space where people can kind of just be and have that sense of acceptance and love, and work things out. And that often allows people to kind of make the difference so that they don't go to the hospital. It's another thing where they can be supportive for family members who are really involved in intensive mental health struggles, because those things ripple out, to other people. So they really, and most importantly, they know they're not therapists, and they know what those boundaries are. They know when something is more of a serious mental health issue. Very ethical.
Well, and that actually kind of brings up another kind of question is we're talking about, see, look, John, you're just like leading me right into these questions. You were hoping, you're like, I'm waiting for another one, ready to get on another one. One question that we get, actually, it's kind of a series of questions that we get, is somebody who cares about, has a friend, a family member, somebody that they love and care about, and they're watching them struggle. And a lot of times we get the question of, how do we know that we have entered into a place of, we need to get help?
Mm-hmm.
So first first question of several of them. How can we identify a mental health need in somebody we love?
Take them to a mental health professional.
So where do you know where that boundary is?
Wait. You can look it up on the internet. And
Exactly. Who needs to talk to a person? You can just look it up.
Google it.
Google it.
Oh, goodness. There's so many different answers to this question. I thought about this, and a lot of it depends. So my first couple answers are certainly something that goes on for a while that's having a big impact on a person's life. A lot of the mental health conditions are measured in terms of impact. So there are those that are kind of chronic and building that you see, but then there are also those really scary ones that come on very suddenly, where you have to err on the side of caution. You know, if you think your loved one's going to kill themselves, you need to be talking to them and talking to somebody about that, rather than just, you don't need to kind of just go it alone because the stakes are so high. The things that are, build up over time, it's often a different question. It's usually about the degree of impairment. Since I work a lot with couples, I want to just comment that, one of the most complicated questions I see in marriage or any relationship is this one about how can I help? We all have our own ideas about what will be helpful to anyone, much less someone with a mental health condition, and we're often quite wrong.
And our spouse, exactly. I know what they need to do. It's like, dear, if we just do this, it will be much better. But whether that's actually helpful, yeah, seriously. Well, and the piece of that's a part in my mind about what you were talking about, John, is that you mentioned is kind of the first level for me is there a threat of harm to themselves or somebody else? So that was the thinking about suicide. That's about thinking they want to die. That's about think that they're actually talking about trying to kill themselves. And it's also about whether they are talking or thinking about harming other people. So there's kind of a basic level of it's gotten to a more intensive and crisis-like stage about risk for somebody else, another person or the person themselves, being able to continue along living. That's kind of one level that's self-evident and kind of obvious. But one of the things that can happen sometimes, surprisingly to me, is that a person in the family or that an individual knows can mention that they're feeling really bad, maybe it'd be better if they just weren't here or that they were dead. And if they stop talking about that, if they mention it and stop talking about it, the other person can sometimes think, oh, it's okay. And they don't want to make it worse by actually talking or asking about it, and they just let it go. And a critical aspect of that is that many people end up still thinking these days that if I bring it up or if I ask them, then that could cause them to do it. And it's absolutely clear. You'll hear this in all kinds of different places and ways, but the evidence is absolutely clear that asking somebody whether they're thinking about hurting themselves or killing themselves or feeling bad enough to want to die will not be the catalyst for doing that. And actually, that is the most direct route to make it less likely for that to happen. And that would be, with that level of issue, that would be a thing that where John says consulting with a mental health professional becomes crucial, because that's a more complicated thing. One of the things that's related in my mind also to John talking about things kind of having a slow burn or progression is also about the notion that if there's some kind of change in their functioning. So it's one thing about whether they may be suicidal or whether they are thinking about hurting or even killing somebody else. But there's another thing where they stop doing stuff that was previously productive or enjoyable or satisfying or meaningful, that changes. or if they start doing things that are unhealthy, not like eating fast food kind of stuff, but unhealthy, emotionally and psychologically unhealthy, or actually harmful and risky. And so those kinds of indicators also are that something is going on with the person, and it can be potentially useful to just make contact with somebody. For example, Stephen's ministers are available, and you don't have to have like the therapy appointment kind of thing. And they would know about these things to say, yeah, this is something to look into or whatever. There are also therapists who you can call, you can contact and say, hey, this is going on. Is this something I should come in about? What are things? And so most of us are certainly willing to talk to folks who are trying to figure out how to either help themselves or help someone else. Because, by the way, if you see these signs in yourself, that's also an indication that it's important to get out there and find some people who have some training and have some skill to be able to potentially help you with what's going on.
And for young children, I feel like it's a little easier to know if something is really wrong, because you'll either have a child whose behavioral problems are so severe that it's, disrupting the family significantly, or there's some issue at school where it's become very apparent that something is wrong. Or you'll have a child that is extremely isolated and withdrawn, and that something is not right because your child is just not being themselves. And so I will many times do parent consultations just to answer questions. And sometimes treatment is necessary and sometimes it's not. And so, don't hesitate to call a professional. You don't necessarily have to do a full round of treatment. It may be that you just need a parent consultation to get some questions answered.
Well, and that's, a lot of us having these conversations this is how you start this, because I know a lot of times parents will be like, I'm not sure what to do with my kid. I don't know if they need help or if they don't, or if this is going to pass, or, so having these kinds of things. Thank y'all. And I'll tell y'all this several times. I tell you this all the time. We're so thankful that we have y'all as resources that we can ask these kinds of questions, and that y'all are willing to help us with this. What'd you say, Stacy?
We're happy to be here.
That's for sure.
We are.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Well, we're glad that y'all are, because this gets out of what we know to do so often. And actually, John, you're probably going to ask me to ask you another question, but y'all just kind of answered all three of them.
Oh my goodness.
The same one.
What will we talk about?
I don't know. No. Let's see. I had 4 pages. No. So those are ways that people can help people who they love and are struggling.
When it's moved to the point that it's not about caring for yourself and being somebody to help kind of care for somebody that is going through something, that these are real issues. There's the next level down from that, which is what are the things, and I was thinking about that in terms of the toolbox. What are generally things that we human beings can do that keep them on a track? This is the idea, not just if something's coming apart, if the wheels are starting to come off of, so to speak, the wagon, but it's also about what happens when I'm stressed and what happens when I'm going through a difficult time. Because going through a stressful, difficult time doesn't inherently mean that you need to go into therapy to be able to deal with that. but it does mean that there are things that are important to try and address with that. And that's a part of what you were also, Weslee, talking about, and it was a part of what we're thinking about tonight, which is the kinds of things that contribute to you being likely to be resilient in the face of struggles, or to cope and manage with the stress that you're experiencing, not the kind that you need to go and get some deep insight and some concentrated work through therapy, but to be more resilient and to manage stress better. Those are thoughts that I think were some of the things that I was thinking about as I was looking to have us come and talk tonight. And to further kind of move into that, the thing that I always think about is Stacy's thing, because she's so informed and so kind of aware of this, and that's the soothing and the management of your body, that fight or flight reaction. And so the comfort and the soothing kinds of strategies, and people who've been with us or who will look back over this will have the various kinds of things that, as I was saying, Stacy often talks about that, but that's what happens when you get into that fight or flight reaction. It actually starts to focus your thinking. And the reason is because that fight or flight is a survival mode. It's a physiological survival mode. And that means it's telling your mind, find the threat and focus on that. Well, what that means is that you have trouble thinking about, figuring out, being more clear-headed when your body has got that going on, whether you're a child or an adolescent or an adult. And so there are lots of different strategies to tone that down. And that's about stress management stuff. That's about soothing strategies. And there's lots of different resources that you can find about that. We've had some on previous times that we talked about, but that's one of the things that I was thinking about as a core element, regardless of what's going on. You come home from a really hard day at work and you're really exhausted. And that would be a time to think about, what is something that I need to do to kind of soothe my frazzled nervous system? And what are some of the things to do with that? So that's an example of a kind of category of stress management approaches that's important to pay attention to.
And for young children, what can happen is that after a long day, you plop them in front of a television rather than letting them blow bubbles or letting them hula hoop or jump rope or go for a bike ride or whatever. You're sitting them in front of a TV. And then the parents are asking me, I don't understand why my 3-year-old can't sleep through the night. And what they don't understand is that their child's nervous system is dysregulated. And so much of what I do is very simple, but it's kind of like a diet, honestly. It's just not easy. It's not easy, but it's very, very simple. So
well, not these days. It's not easy these days because of the availability of screens.
Yeah. Some regulation tools that I recommend are, and really anybody can do this, is the Buddha board. You can get it on Amazon. It's a painting device where you're actually painting with water and then it evaporates. And what's so lovely about it is that there's no performance element to it because it's going to disappear. And just doing that with your non-dominant hand can be very relaxing at the end of your day. Something that my husband does for me, bless him, he has my walking shoes and my walking clothes like ready. Our bedroom is upstairs, but he has my walking stuff ready for me when I get home at night. And I just go for a brisk walk with my husband and we don't talk to each other. It is a silent walk. Because he knows I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to anybody at the end of my day. So we walk, but we don't talk. It's a silent walking experience with my husband at the end of the day. And, he's a man of few words anyways, but and it's a good thing because, anyways. But,
because
I've
you.
got all the work. But, just a brisk walk can be really helpful at the end of your day rather than, the drinking wine or eating sugar or, sitting in front of a television for 3 hours. I'm honestly amazed at how many parents let their children sleep with a television on all night long. And they will tell me we don't watch TV, but the TV's on all the time. And it's a very confusing thing for me. I'm like, I don't understand. But I guess, many American families have become so used to the television being on all the time that they don't even realize that it's on anymore.
It disappears into the background for sure.
Yeah.
But Stacy, the things that
Quiet is really, really helpful for regulating the nervous system, reading a book. So yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
no. I was talking over you because I'm a man, and so I've.
No,
Despite my attempts, I can't help it because, of course, I know what needs to be said. Okay, but what I was going to add to what you're saying is that those same things that you're talking about for kids are absolutely, research is absolutely clear. It's true for adults too. We have the same, it has the same effect on us when we're using those screens. And that's both the stimulation from what comes out of that screen, but it's also literally the screen itself and the way in which the refresh rate of those pixels operates. It really does dysregulate you. And so we're all being dysregulated by that. Children have a greater vulnerability to that because they don't have the management skills to cover over it when it's happening in the same way. And so, and that notion about screens being on all the time and us not noticing it, that's another thing that started with television in the very old days for somebody like me, but is continued in a much more a remarkable and astonishing and wonderful way that's got a bad side to it, which is we're us carrying these things around with us all the time.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on some of the things that Jim and Stacy were saying about getting, toning down your arousal level, your sympathetic nervous system. And that comes up a lot with couples and families. Stacy's example of going for a silent walk with her husband is that you can work together to kind of co-regulate your mood. And just like you can, through conflict, which is, by the way, very damaging for children in homes to witness conflict, verbal, all kinds of conflict, you can work together as a couple to, dampen down conflict in a healthy way and promote that feeling where you're turning toward each other rather than turning away or turning against. And, in relationships, perceptions are so important. And when you have that perception that your partner is there for you, your other members of the family are there for you. None of us do this perfectly, by the way. You can look in my home, and maybe the others will open up their homes too. As they say, if you put someone up on a pedestal, follow them around for 24 hours and see. But this ability to be there for each other and help dampen down, or if you can't get your heart rate down, which, by the way, we couples therapists like myself say, you've got two relationships. One when your heart rate is over 100 and one when it's under 100. And those are two different relationships. And you know which one you want.
hysterical. I love that.
So turning toward is what we look for, and none of us do that perfectly. And so when we don't, we've got to repair, fess up, admit, apologize, get back in the game quickly.
John, I think
the same thing relates to siblings, by the way. The fess up, what did you say? Apologize, try again.
Get back in the game.
Advice for siblings as well.
Yeah.
And the related, in my mind, to what John was talking about is the way in which humans resonate to each other. So part of what he's talking about is that if you're around and therapists have to be really careful about this because this is a human phenomena. if you're around somebody who has a strong emotional state, it will pull you in that direction. But you can also come out of emotional states by the state of the person you're with. And so if you can calm yourself down in the presence of others, you're likely to have them come down with you. And so we kind of mirror each other at times as a part of being socially connected. So that notion about which the above 100 and below 100 is an example of that. About it's going to go, if one starts up, you're likely to pull the other. So you can also regulate this not by saying you need to stop arguing with me and making this so tense, okay, which is getting them to stop, as opposed to finding ways to bring your own arousal down into a more steady, calmer state, even though you may still be trying to deal with the stuff that's going on.
I just checked my heart rate and I'm below 100, so we're okay.
All right, good.
We're in that kind of relationship, so we're doing all right. John, one of the things
What we're talking about is interpersonal neurobiology. There's a whole field of that. And if anyone's interested in reading more about it, anything from Dr. Siegel, how do you spell his name? Seigel, I think.
That's the way it seems to me, but I
Dr.
don't.
Dan Siegel, Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline. I can't remember all of them, but he's quite he's a brilliant man. That would be a good resource to.
Will you send that to me? I wrote it down, but
Yeah, I'm happy to. Sure.
that'd be great. John, one of the things that I heard you say was turn towards one another. And I think I've heard you say in other times that we've done this about John Gottman.
Yeah.
And I loved his books. I've got some over there. But that was those, I don't even, was it 7 Habits of a Healthy Marriage or something like that? That was a really good.
Yeah, it's 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, which is a very widely read, simple thing. He's got one that I love that I love to give my guys who are single, anxious, early 20s. It's called A Man's Guide to Women. And it's written with a lot of humor and it's very short, very readable. And I wish I'd had it when I was in my early 20s. My wife does too.
Anything I've read by him, I've really enjoyed.
Yeah. Let me mention one other book. It's a very specialized book, but it's so helpful for, and I'm so glad he wrote this book. It's called the title it doesn't exactly clue you in as to what it's called. What Makes Love Last? What Makes Love Last? And it's actually a book, again, for the layperson, written about recovery from infidelity. Which is one of the specialties in my practice. I got into that through my work with folks with alcohol and drug abuse problems originally. And hats off to John and Julie Gottman for doing research in this area. It's been really wonderful to be able to offer that to people.
Good. I hadn't heard of that one, so I'm glad to have that one on there too. One of the things I've got a couple other things here. Look, this is fun. There's a couple things that are on the website for our resources. We have a thing with the Methodist Church called WestPath, and they have actually a newsletter that is on building resilience. And so we have that on there. And it is, we've kind of talked tonight we got in real deep there about therapy. And then we kind of pulled it back up to what are some things that we can do in everyday life if we're not at that therapy point yet. And having that positive attitude. They list actually 5 characteristics of resilience, which actually are tools for our toolboxes as well. And the 5 characteristics that they list are positive, focused, flexible, organized, and proactive. And the way that they kind of build some of these things out is that positive people view challenges as opportunities. And I think we've talked about some of that reframing, kind of reorienting the way that we look at it. I don't remember which one of you said, you know, if you think that everything's going to be awful, then that's the only way you see things. So it could be really, really good, but if you're bound and determined that it's going to be awful, then you're going to find the things that are awful. So kind of some of that. They talk about focused people determine where they are headed in the future, and they stick to their goals so that life events and other barriers do not deter them. Now, I also know that we might take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. But keeping that focused, goal-oriented point of view, or, you know, just way that we look at things. Flexible people are open to new and different options when faced with uncertainty. And boy, have we had some uncertainty. Flexible was actually a family word for my family this year. Was, all right, are we being flexible? Are we being gracious? Are we being, you know, and we're building resilience. I think those were our 3. Organized people set priorities and develop structured approaches to manage change. We've had a lot of change too. And then proactive people work with change rather than defend against it. So those were 5 characteristics that they give of resilience, just in general. I'm putting a lot of these things, they're going to be up on the website for everybody to kind of go through, as we could go through them if you wanted to, but I think that would take a while. So they'll be there if anybody wants to go look at that too. We did have one question, and I want to bring that up real quick here before we go. And the question was, I'm depressed and it is hard to have enough energy to just shower. How can I do these other things too?
What other things?
Well, just anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Small. It's small. So the first level is when you have moved into depression to the point that you are having difficulty functioning, that starts to approach one of the things we're talking about getting somebody to meet with who knows about this and knows how to be helpful. So the first thing I'm going to say to that person is, if you don't have a therapist, get one. Now, the likelihood is that that therapist will then also help you move to getting with a medical professional to see if there's a medication issue that can help with what happens when you move into a depressive state, either because you have the biology for it or because you've had things that are so draining and so demoralizing or whatever that you become depressive in your thinking. The biochemistry of the brain is affected by that. And so the medications, antidepressant medications, can help with that. So get to somebody who knows about how to sort out how serious it is and what are some of the core things. So that's going to be the first thing to me. The second thing that will be a part of when you talk to somebody like us, like Stacy and John and I, is that you're also going to start with small, specific things, because it's overwhelming when you're depressed or when you have really strong and overwhelming anxiety, when you have an anxiety disorder, or when you have any other more serious psychiatric or emotional struggle. All of those things interfere with being able to be organized and move forward and do all of these wonderful, have all these wonderful characteristics that you have to be resilient. But small things can help. Making sure that you eat on a regular basis, or that if you're eating too much, because depression, you can like not eat at all, or you can eat like lots and lots of stuff that's inherently energy related, which is often unhealthy, like carbs and sugars and that kind of stuff. And so paying attention to making sure that you've got your eating that's going on. Another piece of that is making sure that you don't spirit yourself away into a corner with depression, because what happens is depression wants you to go sit in the dark and not socialize and be contacting with anybody. And so that means opening up the blinds in your house, even though it feels better to have it all be dark and dingy. And so light, and especially sunlight, becomes really important. Any kind of exercise. One of the most direct effects of mood, especially with depression, is exercise. There are some research that suggests that exercise, moderate exercise, can be as effective as antidepressant medication and therapy. Exercise has a really significant impact. And so just walking to the end of the driveway and back, walking down as far as you can stand to go and back, being in the company of other people. Here we're coming to the social support aspect of that, and we're coming to the importance of other people for you. Depression will make you pull back and not want to be around people. It's exhausting, it's tiring, but we get, as human beings, a natural amount of energy from other people's energy. And so they're just not being depressed can actually provide a little bit of lift. And so making sure that you find people to be around, and you may help people know, I need you to like come over, even though I'm not inviting you, because I don't want you here, because I just want to be by myself, but I need to have somebody here. And that can then add to, y'all can go for a brief walk or other kinds of stuff. And another piece of kind of a natural antidepressant is that you also tend to withdraw from the things that you enjoy. That when you're depressed, you don't have the energy or interest to do things that are satisfying or interesting or enjoyable or fun. And so one of the things that can be kind of easier, is find things to watch, despite the fact that it's on a screen, that is humorous. So there are some movies and there's some films that, to me, I can watch and they make me laugh every single time. Now, for me, it's the Ace Ventura, the two Ace Ventura movies that Jim carried, because, oh my God, when he's got that tutu skirt on and he's pretending to be a football player who's crazy. Okay, I'm rolling on the floor. Now that's me, okay? But the point is, there's going to be something that even when you're not really feeling good, that it's going. So that's just one example of something that brings some of that energy. But I'm going to tell you, with the way in which it sounds from what this person was saying, the really important thing is to get connected to somebody who's going to help them, take them through this, and add the other stuff on there too that's more therapeutic.
If you can allow someone to kind of go into the tunnel with you, that dark place, and then just let them crawl out with you, rather than trying to do it alone. I really think that just asking for help, it's a beautiful thing. We all have to ask for help at some point. So, and the acrostic that I really love is New Start. So NEWSTART, New Start. So it's nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, fresh air, rest, and then trust in God. So if you can think about letting somebody go into the tunnel with you and crawl out and make a new start. What's the scripture? His mercies are new every morning. Like really thinking about, okay, this is a new day. I'm going to make a new start and ask for help. I'm feeling a lot of empathy for that person that called in that can't take a shower.
And this is where Stephen's ministers become really important, because you can call them and they will get in touch with you, and they can be with you as you start figuring out how to help you build some other resources in place without you having to do anything other than just contact the church and say, hey, I need somebody to give me a call. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
If I could add one thing, it's that, many of the people that I have met have had previous experiences with treatment and that have discouraged them. And I want to encourage this person by saying, you know, there are newer forms of treatment, you know. I have a lot of people, I've seen amazing results with ketamine infusions or transcranial magnetic stimulation where you can, so there are many more treatments to be tried. And if for some reason you got hold of a bad therapist, you know, had a bad experience, by all means, please try again, you know, because you deserve it. And there is hope out there. Persist, and you're very likely to be rewarded.
So
And
good
thank
luck.
you for being so brave to ask that. Very
Absolutely.
brave.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for being willing to offer all of that information too. As a reminder, we do have the Stephen Ministry. You can go on bumc.net under the care tab, and Stephen Ministry is right underneath there. And there is a phone number and there is a contact name. So if you just want to go ahead and do that, then we'll get you set up with somebody too. There are also clergy here on staff. So you can email any of us and we'll get you set up and connected to wherever and whoever and however we can. So yes, thank you for being brave. And thank you all for being here and helping with those kinds of questions and then other tools to put in our toolbox for whatever it is we face, whether it be stressful day or needing something a little more serious. So thank you all for being here. Just as a housekeeping note, we're going to take a couple months off. I know y'all are going to miss us. I'm going to miss y'all. Like, what am I going to do next month? I'll just call you. That's what I'll just show up. It'll be great. So
we'll go running together. Right. No, we will not.
What about a silent walk? A silent walk.
That's right, a silent walk. I'm with Stacy. Silent walk. That's what I'm
doing. Right. Like you can be silent.
Okay. You're right. That won't work. If Stacy can do it, I can do it. Okay.
That's true. Y'all got to be on me, so there's proof I can be quiet that long.
Well, we're going to take a couple months off. And we are going to put some things up on social media during those months. So we're not going to be totally gone. But we're going to come back in the fall, and we will talk about how we build resilience in specific categories, like children. We're going to start with children. How do you build resilience in children? And then we'll move to teenagers, and I think we're going to do singles and then couples. It's kind of our plan. And we're going to just kind of look at what resilience looks like. So that's kind of our plan from now. If you have any questions, if you have any needs during these next couple months, please, please, please reach out either to Stacy, John, Jim, or myself, any Stephen ministers. Just let us know if you need something. And until then, we hope y'all have a good summer. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.